Dobro. History. Archive.
On the afternoon of December 5, 1945, 5 U.S. Navy bombers took off from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. It was supposed to be a totally routine training mission. Instead, they flew straight into one of the greatest aviation mysteries of all time. The story of Flight 19, well, it's pretty much ground zero for the whole Bermuda Triangle legend. But what really happened that day? Okay, let's get into it and pull apart the facts from the fiction. This quote, "This is where it all begins." For decades, this has been the smoking gun, the proof that Flight 19 ran into something otherworldly. A time warp, aliens, you name it. It sounds so dramatic, right? So spooky. And it is a complete and utter fabrication. It was never said. The real story you'll see is far more human and honestly, way more terrifying. So before we even touch the myth, let's just ground ourselves in the tragic reality here. The number is 27. 27 men lost their lives that day. 14 guys in the 5 bombers of Flight 19, and 13 more in a rescue plane that was sent to go find them. These were real people, and their story has absolutely nothing to do with the supernatural. So what was Flight 19 actually up to? This wasn't some secret cloak and dagger operation. It was late in the day. This was the last training hop before the guys got to go on weekend leave. I mean, it was about as mundane and routine as you can possibly get for a naval aviator.
The mission's official name says it all, doesn't it? Navigation problem number 1. The whole point was to practice something called dead reckoning. It's basically navigating over open water where everything looks the same, using only your compass, your clock, and your airspeed. No landmarks. For these student pilots, it was kind of like a final exam. And the tragic irony, of course, is that this test of navigation skills turned into the ultimate, fatal navigation problem.
And this was the machine they were flying. The TBM Avenger was an absolute beast, a loud, powerful brute of a torpedo bomber. I mean, the cockpit was just an overwhelming place to be. And you have to understand, the pilot was physically cut off from his crew. If his intercom went out, he was completely alone up there. And this is a big one, its compass system was notoriously unreliable. This thing was a weapon of war, not some delicate precision navigation tool. All right, so let's walk through the timeline of what actually happened. Because this isn't a story of a plane just suddenly vanishing, poof, off the radar. No, this was a slow-motion crisis that played out over several agonizing hours, and it was all documented in the radio logs. At the very center of this whole thing is the flight leader, Lieutenant Charles Taylor. Now, he was an experienced combat pilot, there's no doubt about that, but his service record showed 2 really critical things. 1, he had a history of getting lost. He'd even had to ditch a plane at sea before. And 2, on this very day, he had asked his commanding officer to find someone else to lead the flight. He didn't want to go. His request was denied. So you've got a guy flying under duress before he even climbs into the cockpit. And here it is. This is the moment everything starts to go wrong. Less than 2 hours into the flight, Taylor gets on the radio with this message. "Both my compasses are out." Think about that. You're on an overwater navigation exercise. This is a complete disaster. He's flying blind. And then his next few words reveal a fatal mistake. He thinks the broken land he sees is the Florida Keys. So the million-dollar question, right? Where was he really? With his instruments shot, all he could do was look out the window and make his best guess based on what he thought he knew about the area. And that guess, it was tragically, horribly wrong. Okay, so this slide right here, this is the whole tragedy in a nutshell. Taylor was convinced he was over the Florida Keys. And hey, if he was right, flying north was the correct move. It would have taken him right back to the Florida mainland. But he wasn't over the Keys. He was way over here, over the Bahamas. From there, the correct way home was due west. So when he confidently ordered his flight to turn north, he wasn't flying to safety, he was flying parallel to it, deeper and deeper into the empty Atlantic, just as the sun was starting to go down. And here is just the most heartbreaking part of the entire story. The other pilots, the students, whose compasses were probably working just fine, they knew he was wrong. This transmission was overheard. They knew the #1 rule for any pilot lost off the coast of Florida: just fly west. The setting sun is a giant, perfect compass. Fly towards it and you will hit land. It's that simple. So why didn't they just break formation and head for home? I mean, it seems so obvious, right? Well, the answer is military discipline. It's drilled into you from day one. In the air, you follow your flight leader, period. It doesn't matter if he's making a mistake. They were trapped by protocol, literally forced to follow their confused instructor on a flight to nowhere. This is it, the last clear order that anyone ever heard from Lieutenant Taylor. Fuel is running dangerously low, it's pitch black, the weather is turning nasty, and he gives the command to stick together for a group ditching at sea. The thinking in the Navy was that this gave you the slimmest chance of survival, and it made for a bigger target for rescuers to find. It was the final admission that all hope of finding land was gone. But believe it or not, the tragedy doesn't end there. As Flight 19 was burning through its last few gallons of fuel, a huge search and rescue mission was already spinning up. And this mission would lead to a second, completely separate disaster. The plane they sent out to search was this, a PBM Mariner flying boat. And its nickname tells you everything you need to know, the flying gas tank. Seriously. These planes were infamous for a design flaw where fuel vapors could leak and build up inside the plane's body. And that is exactly what happened that night. Just 23 minutes after it took off, the Mariner didn't just vanish, it exploded. And this wasn't some mystery. People saw it happen. The crew of a nearby tanker ship, the SS Gaines Mills, reported seeing a massive fireball in the sky at the exact time and in the exact location where the Mariner dropped off the radar. So let's be super clear about this, because this is vital. The loss of that second plane, the rescue plane, had absolutely nothing to do with whatever caused Flight 19 to get lost. It was a tragic, horrible coincidence caused by a well-known mechanical problem. Two separate incidents, linked only by the fact they happened on the same night in the same general area. So, if the events are this explainable, how on earth did we get from a story about navigational error and a mechanical failure to a legend about alien abductions and paranormal vortexes? Well, it all started with the official Navy report. The first investigation correctly blamed Lieutenant Taylor for getting his flight lost. But his mother protested. She argued, pretty reasonably, that without the wreckage of the planes, you couldn't prove it wasn't a mechanical failure. So, a couple of years later, mostly to spare the family's feelings, the Navy amended the report. They changed the verdict from pilot error to two words that would launch 1,000 conspiracy theories: cause unknown. And boom, that's all it took. That one bureaucratic change created a vacuum. See, cause unknown doesn't mean unknowable or supernatural. It just means they didn't have the physical evidence to be 100% certain. But to the public, it sounded like even the Navy was stumped. The door was now wide open for speculation. And from there, the pulp writers and the sensationalists just ran with it. Whitewater, a totally normal term for rough seas with white taps, became some kind of glowing alien phenomenon. That famous line, "Don't come after me," complete fiction, invented for a book decades later. The whole documented story of human error and compass failure got completely buried and repackaged as a deep, dark mystery. And you can literally watch the legend get built, piece by piece, over the decades. It starts in '47 with that cause unknown verdict. Then in the '60s, a writer coins the catchy phrase Bermuda Triangle. In the '70s, a massive bestseller comes out that's full of made-up details. And finally, Hollywood seals the deal with a blockbuster movie showing the pilots of Flight 19 being returned to Earth by aliens. The transformation from tragedy to myth was complete. And that really leaves us with this question, doesn't it? The legend of the Bermuda Triangle is almost comforting. It's an idea that some powerful outside force is to blame for these things. But the reality of Flight 19, I think, is much more unsettling. It's a story about how good, trained people, using the best technology they had, can be completely undone by a single mistake, by their own biases, and by a chain of command that couldn't be broken. A slow, agonizing, and entirely human catastrophe with no monster to blame but ourselves.